What's up, guys? We're Deep Roots Disc Golf and we're back. Today, we're on a journey. We're looking for the best overstable mid. So we have 16 of the most popular overstable mid-ranges, and this is all made possible by Bang & Change, the go-to disc golf store in the Triad.
So similar to the Perfect Putter, we're doing a bracket style. So we divided the 16 discs into 2 days of brackets, 8 discs and 8 discs. It's bracket style, and just like March Madness, anything can happen. Let's check out the breadth. The bracket is made up of 16 of the most popular overstable mids on the market. From the Innova Rock 3 to the MVP Deflector, we've got mid-ranges with all different intensities of overstability. So let's talk overstable mid-range eligibility. We've excluded all putt and approach discs. That means no harps, no zones, no A3s, and in order to be on this list, the manufacturer needs to specify the discs as a mid-range on their website. Now for bracket seeding, we use the best overstable mid-range list from Disc Golf Now to seed as many of the discs that we had from that list. I'll link to the article in the description down below. So for the remaining mid-ranges, we randomly assign them by pulling their name out of a hat. Before we jump into it, consider hitting that subscribe button to support the channel, and make sure to leave a comment down below, letting us know if we missed any overstable mid-ranges on our list. All right, on to day one.
Give us your thoughts, Dylan. What are you looking for in an overstable mid-range?
For me, for overstable mid-range, I'm really looking for something that's not going to turn over too much. Maybe a little S-curve when I throw it backhand or forehand. Looking for something that feels good in the hand, not super shallow, but I'm not looking for something really deep. Lastly, just how it flies, does it skip, does it not skip? I particularly like something that skips a little bit because that helps my distance, so that's what I'm looking for.
I think for me it's 3 things. First off, resistance to turn. So I'm okay with it flipping up, maybe the very slightest amount, but mainly the most I want it to do is flip to flat. Second, I'm looking for some glide. The mid-range, I want it to fly like further than a putter, further than an approach disc. I want to be able to count on it for like a good 250 for me with a noodle arm here. And then the last thing is a reliable fade. So I feel like those 3 things make for an ideal mid-range for me. All right, first up, we've got the 1 seed. We've got the Innova Rock 3. This baby right here, we've got it in the Star Plastic, 176 grams. This thing is a 5-speed, one of the most popular mid-ranges out there. So that's hence why it's the 1 seed.
And for the 16 seed?
All right, for the 16 seed, we got the Discmania Maestro. It's a 4-speed, considered a mid-range. Little pop top.
What are your thoughts on the 16 seed first?
So with the 16 seed, as I said, it's a little pop top. It's got a deep rim. For me, like I said earlier, when I'm looking for a mid-range, I'm looking for something that's gonna turn a little bit, but in the end, turn back. And this one just didn't do it for me. I struggled a little bit. When I throw my backhand, I start on a little anhyzer angle. And for me, this one just kept turning. It never wanted to fight back. It doesn't skip a lot because it's got a little bit of a low glide. It kind of sits down. So for me, it was a little underwhelming.
Eric, any thoughts on the 1 seed?
1 seed, the Rock 3, really impressed me. I had a Rock when I first started playing, but it didn't last long for me because I picked up a Prodigy M2. So really not much experience with the Rock. This thing's awesome. A little bit of a flip on some of a flight pass, but not a turnover. And so it really had a lot of glide and a reliable fade every single time. Not like the most dumpy in terms of overstability, but I mean, I can see why this thing's really popular. It's got a great feel, good glide, reliable fade.
For me, it may flip up a little bit too much. On the forehand line, I tried a lot of those today. Yeah, you can't really put a lot of torque on that because you will turn it over. You got to be careful with that. But on the backhand line, for the most part, it was a pretty good disc.
Is this one pretty obvious?
I believe so.
This one's obvious. I mean, I'm going Rock 3.
I'm going Rock 3. For the number 8, we got the Luna. No, I'm just kidding. This is the Malta. All right, so this is just the Discraft Malta. We got it in the ESP plastic, 173, 174. Got the Deep Roots stamp on it.
And for the 9.
Coming in at the 9 seed, we have the Westside Discs Anvil. This thing's a 4-speed, it says mid-range driver here.
All right, any thoughts on the Anvil?
Yeah, so the Anvil to me, I like the plastic first off. This is the VIP plastic. Definitely true to flight numbers. 2 glide, 4 fade. This thing is dumpy, and the 2 glide, it really feels almost more so like an approach disc to me. It says mid-range driver, but it feels more like in the realm of like an A3 or a zone. So that being said, I mean, it's a great disc. I felt like we had some good throws with it, but it definitely has less glide than some of the other discs that we were throwing today.
Dylan, thoughts on the Malta?
All right, the Malta, I'm gonna be honest, I really like this disc. You know, it's got the perfect amount of turnover and it'll fade back, glides really well. You get a good skip at the end. You can put it on any angle and you know what it's gonna do.
I agree with that. I feel like the Malta, as opposed to this, has a ton of glide, is very true to its line. So it'll get to flat, sort of, but then it doesn't dump. It has a consistent like fade with a good, like, it definitely glides out to give you that good distance. Unless I threw that on Anheuser, it's not going right. I would say it's flat to fading.
Anyone taking the anvil here?
No.
Yeah, I'm taking the Malta.
Going Malta.
Malta moves on.
All right, for our next pairing, we have the 4-seed Prodigy M2. This one we've got here from Bang & Chains is the Ezra Robinson Signature Series with the Prodigy on the back and the 400 plastic.
And the 13 seed.
13 seed. So we got the MVP deflector. It's in the Proton plastic, 176 grams. All right, you can see it right here. That's pretty flat.
Any thoughts on the deflector first?
So the deflector, you have no chance of going right. It's hard to get it up even flat just because it's so overstable. It skips pretty well, so that's something I was looking for, but it had no right turn. So for me, I mean, it was hard to get on board with this disc.
So the M2 I have an interesting relationship with. M2 is the first disc that I really loved throwing when I first started playing. As I grew into my game a little bit, I felt like it wasn't overstable enough, and I'm thinking maybe I had a bad one. This thing was great. Definitely more of a straight flying overstable mid. So it got up to flat or even turned a little bit. Reliable fade at the end, I would say yes. My thing with the Prodigy mid-ranges is that I feel like they have great flight, great glide. They all fly relatively similar to me. And even this one, which is one of their more overstable ones, it's not like the most overstable mid that you'll find. Definitely a good mid though. And I think we all liked throwing this disc. I feel like the deflector is a utility disc. Maybe if you've got a really big arm, that's like a good mid for you. It feels like a driver. Wow. I'm really high on MVP right now. I've been loving throwing some of their plastic, but that thing, I just couldn't really throw it.
Super sensitive to nose angle, like very.
Yeah.
Almost like fairway-esque.
Very much so. It's super flat and super overstable.
Yeah, and on the forehand, I mean, I was torquing. I mean, I was putting it on an angle like this, and it was still trying to fight back. So
it's an interesting disc. It's just definitely not an everyday overstable mid.
Yep.
To me.
The tilt of mid ranges.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I would say.
Okay. All right. What are you guys going for? What are you moving on?
Dylan?
M2.
M2.
I'm going M2 as well.
M2 moves on.
Next, we've got the 5 seed, the Raw. It's in the iBlend plastic.
Going up against the 12 seed, the Discraft Dark Claw Wasp and the Jawbreaker plastic here.
The Raw, it's kind of a shallow rim, big bead, a little pop toppy. For me, it kind of had the tendency to turn right and then back left, get a little nice flex shot when I release it on a little bit of an Anheuser angle. With the forehand, it played out really well. It has a little bit of a tendency to turn over if you torque it too much, but if you throw it with a lower speed arm, it does exactly what you need it to for an overstable mid-range.
Yeah, the Wasp, honestly, I felt like these discs were relatively similar in a lot of ways. This also has a fairly large bead, tendency to turn right, then a pretty reliable fade back, throwing right-hand backhand. And to the left, the Jawbreaker plastic is awesome. It's got a great feel, in my opinion, so it's just fun to throw this type of plastic. I got some great throws with this thing, pushed a long ways and some good distance. Not the most overstable in the batch, but yeah, somewhat similar, kind of in that medium overstable category with some of these discs that we've been throwing.
All right, it's round one. What disc are you guys pushing through?
I think that for me, this one seemed to push a little bit further for me, and I had better throws with the Wasp in this round one, these round one throws that we were doing. So I'm going Wasp.
Okay.
All right, and for me, I had the tendency to keep turning the Wasp over a little too far, and it didn't really want to fight back, but the Raw fought back for me, so in that case, I'm going Raw.
All right, so tough decision here because I bagged the Wasp. I will say that the Wasp is one of my favorite discs in my bag, but it's not my favorite overstable mid-range. I think that this thing, after a couple days of throwing, beats in so nicely to like one of the straightest discs in my bag, which is not what I'm looking for in an overstable mid. The raw was super surprising today. I'm not gonna lie that I was banking on the Wasp moving through in this first round. I was like, they're gonna love this thing. But when we were out in the field throwing this thing was super consistent. You could bomb this thing, you could torque over on it, and you knew it was not turning over. Because of that, while I love this disc, I am gonna push the raw through. In this matchup, we got the 8 seed, the Discraft Malta,
versus the 1 seed, the Innova Rock 3.
I'm really disappointed that these two discs have to go against each other in this matchup. I think both of these easily could have been in the top 4. That's the bracket style. So my opinions on the Malta versus the Rock 3, I think that when Paul Macbeth came over to Discraft, he was like,
I need to make Pro Rock 3.
I'm gonna make it in a Malta. That's why I think this is such a hard comparison, because I feel like these discs are so similar. The Malta, maybe, at least the mold that we have, maybe having a little bit more dome than the Rock 3. But my experience with the Rock 3 today was very straight disc, reliable fade, got some of the best distance out of any of these. So what I love about the Malta is that you can torque on this thing and you know exactly where it's going. It's a consistent 275 to like 290 throw. You can put it on rainbows, you can put it straight, you know that it's gonna fade, and it doesn't skip tremendously when it hits the ground.
I would agree that the Rock 3 had some of the best glide and the most distance of any disc we saw out of here. I think that's partially due to the fact that it is somewhat less stable for us. We're all like, you know, intermediates with not the strongest arms in the world. So we could get it to flip up and even turn a little bit, which led to a little bit more distance. But this thing's a great disc, clean releases. The Star plastic is really nice plastic to throw.
Honestly, my favorite Innova disc I've ever thrown is this Rock 3.
I feel like we're choosing between two greats here.
I'm gonna have to go with the Malta. Again, it's in my bag. I threw all these different mid-ranges today. Spoiler alert, there might be a mid-range that I like more than this in day 2, but for day 1, this was my favorite mid-range.
I mean, going back to my criteria, I mean, reliable fade, felt like they both had it. Glide, both had it for days. I worry about this once it beats in really turning more. Like this turn for us, turned and burned on some of our throws versus the Malta, like the thing came back. Like you could throw it and it glided, threw it flat, pushed, and then a strong, reliable fade without the biggest skip in the world. So I just felt like for the video that we're doing, the overstable mid-range slot, I feel like the Malta takes it. All right, so for our next matchup in round 2, we've got the Prodigy M2 here
versus the Infinite Discs Raw in the iBlend plastic. So the Raw for me has a little bit more of a convex shape, a little bit more bull nose. Some would say it's not a chamfer. It does have a pretty significant bead. The thing about this particular Raw, a lot of pop top.
Yeah, so this is actually, I've switched over to holding my personal M2. This was the first one I ever got. Yeah, not much of a bead on this thing, much more of a rounded edge on the M2.
So my thoughts on this matchup, I'm not gonna lie, I think the M2 had a pretty easy matchup. There's like a level of stability of the deflector that we were throwing that just doesn't work for us as amateur noodle arm throwers. So the M2 had the easy win. I think the Raw had the challenging matchup. It's probably one of the closest matchups all day. For me, I'm looking for consistency, and the M2 just doesn't have that. Eric?
I would agree. The Prodigy mid-ranges are good discs, lots of glide, but they're not super consistent. This wasn't as overstable as a beginner as I thought it would be, and it still wasn't what I was looking for.
I would put that disc in the same stability range as the Wasp. And if we passed the Raw on because it was more consistent, more reliable in that overstable rainbow fade that you're looking for, I'm gonna have to do that again here.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I feel like they had comparable distance, but that was more reliable and more consistent over the course of the throws that we were making. So I'm gonna go Raw as well, even though I love Prodigy.
Raw sweeps it.
There you have it. The 8-seed Malta and the 5-seed Raw are heading to the Final Four as the winners of Day 1. Make sure to tune in Thursday to see which mid-rangers take down Day 2 and round out the Final 4 best overstable mid-rangers. We're Deep Roots Disc Golf. We'll see you in the next one.
Oh, hey there. Today, we're on a journey to find the best overstable mid. Is this it?